Welcome to the very first An Old Man Watches video. Today's movie, I'm not going to waste any time telling you what it is because you will have seen it in the video title. But today's movie is White Pongo, also known as The White Gorilla, from 1945. I'll start off by saying that as a work of entertainment, this film is a complete failure. Let's get that out there right away. Now, despite that, and we'll talk about a little bit about why that is, despite that, it's a movie that's got some things that are worth talking about from a narrative and story perspective and the like, and that's what we're going to do. But to give you a really potted summary of this movie, basically scientists discover evidence of a strange white gorilla-like creature in the African jungle, and they hypothesize that this is the missing link in human evolution, and they go to capture it, and various tedious shenanigans ensue before they succeed in capturing it and taking it back to civilization. So in other words, basically what we have is a movie here that is like the first act and a half to 2 acts of King Kong, except without any entertainment value, and the monkey's just, or the ape, to be more accurate, is just kind of a regular ape-sized creature rather than, King Kong behemoth. So that's in a nutshell what White Pongo is about. So what's it actually got in it? What does it feature? What's worth talking about in this film? Well, as I've already kind of foreshadowed, the first thing that's worth talking about in this film is padding, because boy oh boy is this a boring movie. How boring? Well, let's put it this way. The movie I watched is 71 minutes long. There is a short film cut of White Pongo that is 10 minutes long. The only thing of value that would be lost from watching the short version is 10 minutes of your time. Because trust me, there's no value in that 10-minute movie, and there's no value in the 70-minute movie. There is an awful lot of, stuff happening on screen that doesn't actually lead anywhere. The characters have various motivations that are just, able to basically be completely excised from the film without actually affecting the main storyline, and that's how it's so easy for them to have turned it basically into a 10-minute movie. So there's a lot of padding in this film. So it's a principal reason why, obviously, as a work of entertainment, it fails. And the padding will exist because basically filming people standing around talking is cheap. And this is a cheaply made movie on a soundstage somewhere. They're certainly not on location. The second thing this movie features, and it's something I really want to talk about, is racism. Oh boy, does this film feature racism. And it's important to note that it's not conscious, directed, intentional racism. There are no characters talking about people of other races in a deliberately targeted, offensive way. What there is just lots of assumed, thoughtless racism. For instance, a character, one of these learned men of science, saying that, the white Pongo is clearly more evolutionary advanced than a black-furred gorilla. That kind of thing. There's a lot of that here. The only non-white character of any significance is literally named Mumbo Jumbo. And I know there's a YouTuber with that name, completely unrelated, but Mumbo Jumbo is, meaning nonsense, rubbish, is where that comes from. And the only African character of any significance is basically literally named Talks Rubbish. So there's a lot of just unconscious, unthinking racism. And in older movies like this, and this movie is over 75 years old, in a lot of older movies, particularly from the 40s, there's going to be a lot of racism and sexism that's just completely unexamined and unconscious on the part of the people writing it, but obviously communicated to everybody who watches the film and informing the perspectives of those people. So it's important to recognise this stuff happening in old movies and to not just write it off as, well, that was the times. It reinforced the times. And just think about it, this is 1945. This is the end of World War II. There are, African-American soldiers fighting and dying in Europe while this movie is being made, and it's saying stuff like that. It's, yeah. It's pretty bad, but it's, from the narratives we tell ourselves as a society, it's important to understand the stories we told ourselves and the things that our entertainment told us quite seriously. And this is not presented in the film as in any way a controversial sentiment to have. This is a man of science giving you the facts. No, it's not. It's racism. And finally, and this is on a much lighter note, I'm pleased to say, but worth discussing because it was a thing. It features a gorilla, quote unquote. It's a man in a suit. And look, there are good reasons to have a man in a suit rather than a real gorilla. It's going to be a lot easier to work with because, it's not an animal, it's a person and they can understand direction and they're getting paid. It's much less dangerous because, whilst gorillas aren't necessarily aggressive, they are very, very strong and powerful and can unintentionally hurt somebody, let alone intentionally hurt somebody if they get angry for some reason. And this is a cheaply made movie. It makes sense to have a guy in a gorilla suit being the gorilla. What's interesting, and it's wider than this movie, is that being a guy in a gorilla suit was a career that you could have in Hollywood in the 40s. Like, the guy who is in the gorilla suit, that was what he did. He acted as a gorilla in a bunch of movies. This is something that, and later on, in later decades, you see it with DC Comics. They used to put gorillas on the covers of comics all the time. There was they would see a sales spike by putting a gorilla. I don't know what's going on, but it's worth noting that being a gorilla was a thing as a career. Why do gorillas kind of have this fascination for us? I don't know, but they clearly do. We use them a lot in media. Obviously here, they're being used as a metaphor for potentially the evolutionary process, which is, not really where they sit, but, they're on a different spur to us. We didn't descend from gorillas, directly. We, have a common shared ancestor, but that's a very different thing. But yeah, humankind seems to have a real interest in gorillas, at least, Western Anglo sphere, American media seems to have an interest in it. I don't know where it's coming from, but it's interesting to note that, in the 40s, I Play Gorillas was a valid career choice in Hollywood. So yeah, that's kind of the three things that are kind of worth talking about in White Pongo. Certainly the plot isn't worth any more time than I gave it. The acting's not worth any time. It's all very, very low rent stuff. Almost certainly this was originally conceived as a B-roll film. And the fact that it can then be shortened into a short film was also probably a way of just earning some extra money. You saw that a lot in old Hollywood, where they would do two versions of a film or a serial that they could turn into a film. So it would be 12 parts of 20 minutes each, but then they could make an 80-minute movie out of it, which basically meant that 12-part serial had about 2 hours of nonsense in it just to pad, that sort of thing. But yeah, you saw a lot of that in the times. So that is what I had to talk about with White Pongo. A few interesting things to kind of discuss what was happening with it, but not actually an interesting movie itself. You can probably find this on archive.org. I watched it in a DVD box set called SF Classics. Obviously, very loose definition of both SF, science fiction, and classics here. But I'm pretty sure every movie in the box set, given how cheap the box set was, is in the public domain, and that's how they were able to basically package it all up and sell the media so cheaply, because I paid about $20 for 50 movies. That's White Pongo. The next movie that I'll be talking about is from the same box set, so I'm sure it's going to be just as terrible. And it's The Snow Creature from 1954. Will it be racist? Yes, it will be racist. Will it have something else that we might want to discuss? Hopefully, because, we've kind of already talked about racism in old movies. Don't want to be doing it every video. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you found some entertainment value from this. Certainly more entertainment value than I got from the movie. And I hope you come back for the next one. Thanks for watching.